Hi Grade 3-4, welcome to week 1 of art. This term we will be looking at the 7 elements of art in more detail. Now I introduced this to you last term a little bit, but we will be looking at it more this term. So the 7 elements of art are colour, shape, line, form, value, space and texture. So there's 7 of them and they're all very important. Some artworks will have all 7 in them, some might only have 1 or 2. So we're looking today in this art lesson for 2 weeks, this one runs for 2 weeks, you'll be looking at space in more detail. So how do we find space in our artwork? So I'm going to show you an example of space in an artwork and what we'll be doing in our art lesson. So we are looking at an artwork in a book, Dinotopia. I'm sure some of you have seen this book. Beautiful illustrations, and I wanted to show you this double page spread as it demonstrates space quite well in this artwork. So for our art lesson for the next 2 weeks, we are looking at space, specifically the foreground, middle ground and background in an artwork. So what I mean by that is when you look at an artwork, the things that are closest to you in the front, this is called the foreground, okay? So they're the closest to you. Then we have the middle ground. There's a bit of a hint in that word, middle ground. So that's in the middle of our artwork and it's mostly where the focus is. Then we have our background. Now that's behind the middle ground and it's often smaller, further away, whereas the foreground is larger and closer. If this character was in the background, he would be a little speck in the distance. Rather than in the foreground, they are larger. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the foreground, middle ground and background in our artwork today. To start our artwork for the next 2 weeks, we have a nice bit of card that I have put in your take-home packs and I have folded it for you in 3. So your first step is you need to undo that for me so it's nice and flat, and it's good that if we've got those creases, excellent. So the things you will need to start off with is that you need a pair of scissors and you need a pencil or a texter. Doesn't really matter what we use yet, you're going to have to get colours and things soon. The very first thing you're going to do is you are going to be drawing a line from starting from here all the way up to this corner here. Now it's not a straight line, I would like you to draw a wavy line for me, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and draw my line and then we'll come back together. I've drawn my wavy line from this point here all the way up to the top, and now I'm going to use my scissors to carefully cut along that line. If it's really small wiggles, that's going to be very difficult to cut, so keep it nice and wavy. We have 2 pieces now where I've cut that one. You can throw this one out now, we don't need that anymore. Now we have got a nice wavy line. So Grade 3-4s, we have cut out our wavy line now. We are ready to gently fold this back together in those creased lines. Now, when we bring it up a little closer, you will see that I've got 3 different layers here. Now those 3 different layers have created a foreground, a middle ground and a background. And I have done this on a little bit of thicker paper which would have been in your take-home pack. So now you can, once it's creased, leave it by itself, stands upright, and we are making a 3-dimensional pop-up of a landscape that demonstrates space within our artwork. So that's that element of design we were talking about, space, when we're looking at foreground, middle ground and background. So we have our folded bit of paper here and I've got my middle ground in the middle. Then here I've got my background, which is all the way at the back. And here at the front is my foreground. So with that in mind, I have now illustrated one of mine. Okay, so I've chosen a little bit of a nature with some houses here. In the foreground, the things are closer to me, so they appear larger. And then in the middle ground, that's just in the middle between the foreground and the background. And here in the distance is the background, where everything is a little smaller. So here is my first 3D landscape before colouring, and here is my second one. This one's more of a cityscape. So in the front you've got things that are closer to you. So we've got a car, fire hydrant, paths, a large tree. Behind it we've got buildings that are further away, and in the sky we've got a night twilight sort of sky. Okay, so this is probably what you should get up to in the first week, and then the next week you will be colouring. At the end of week 2, you will be submitting it to Google Classroom. So I'm going to go ahead and colour in and show you what the final product looks like. I finished colouring in my picture now, and I've used a combination of textures as well as pencils, and I have coloured up to each foreground, middle ground and background. If I open it up, you can see I stopped colouring here because you don't see it. So you don't need to colour the entire way, just a little bit down. And if I go behind to my background as well, you can see I stopped here because we're not going to see all of this, so you don't need to spend all that time. Okay, grade 3-4, you're done for this week. I'll put a link up on Google Classroom at the end of week 2, so you've got 2 weeks to do this art project and you can submit it through there. We've been looking at the elements of art, particularly space, but you might also see that you can see some other elements of art in there like line, colour, what else can we see? Shape, definitely. You might see some other ones as well. Don't forget to submit after week 2, and I can't wait to see your artworks. Bye.